You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, the #1 resource for growing your function musician business. If you're a solo wedding singer, part of a 12-piece luxury show band, or anything in between, and want to learn from other successful musicians, you're in the right place.
You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, and on today's episode, I'm very excited to be joined by international session singer and tribute artist, Calli Malpas. Calli, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. I'm sure that it is one of the many things that you do, and we'll get into a little bit of that as well. But we're mainly here today to talk to you about your tribute show, Pinkish, which, if you can't guess by the name, is a tribute show to the artist Pink. But before we get into that, I'd love to go back and learn a little bit more about your career in general, and kind of where you got into things and the journey that's brought you to where you are now.
Okay. I've been a full-time singer for 20 plus years, which is all too telling as to how old I am. But yeah, it's been mainly I've trod the boards. I've done, of ridden that journey that most people have. So, I've done the pubs and clubs and functions and, then went onto the wedding circuit, and then kind of the higher end function work and that sort of thing. But that was kind of it's always been my bread and butter work, and and I've been very, very fortunate to be full time with that for about 16 or 17 years, really.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, very, very lucky. It's not an easy industry to make a full time living.
Yeah.
But yeah, touch wood, it's kept me out of trouble for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of it was born out. I wanted to be a dancer. That was my kind of dream as a kid. And I started dancing at the age of 3, and that was the goal. And I was terrible at it. So it was just never gonna materialize.
Happens so often with dreams, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was always the kid that was kind of, at stage school, I was at the back of the group, and I was the one that you can be in it, but maybe not front and center. So yeah, kind of, I did sort of a stage school type thing as a kid. And that was where the singing came from, really. It was, they very quickly realised that, we need her to be singing rather than dancing. That's where her forte is lying at the moment. So yeah, that kind of pushed me in that direction, I guess. My dad was always a musician, singer, guitarist, harmonica player, sort of blues stuff, that kind of thing. Dragged me around the pubs and clubs as a kid. So it was kind of like, it was ingrained, I think, from quite a young age, really. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just always, I couldn't ever see myself doing anything else, really. I wasn't any good at anything else to begin with. But, I've had your 9 to 5 jobs, but it's just not me. I'm not very good with regularity, and, I need that kind of, I need that dopamine hit, what's coming next kind of thing. So it's just always been the thing that even when I've come away from it, I've always kind of circled back to that area of my career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you taken some breaks from music in general then a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the problem for me is I get really sick of the sound of my own voice. So when you're singing, and I was, sort of between 7 and 9 shows a week for quite a long time. And I just got really bored of hearing myself. So it was like, okay, I need to step away from this and do something normal, have a normal job and go to bed at a normal time. And, so I've done I've all sorts, health insurance sales and recruitment consultant and, all those kind of, I don't want to say boring jobs because they were.
Everyone's quote unquote normal jobs.
But yeah, absolutely. So it just, whilst they served a purpose at the time, it was never something that I was going to be able to do long term, I don't think.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you have quite eclectic, like a musical repertoire. And I've seen like on your website and stuff, like from rock music to jazz and some vintage stuff as well. So, I mean, and you've already mentioned that you've done like lots of variety of different kinds of like sort of function work. Do you have a favorite or not?
Yeah, I like the rock stuff. I like kind of the angry girl indie, Alanis Morissette, Gwen Stefani, that kind of stuff. My dad brought me up on Zeppelin and Thin Lizzy and, that kind of 70s cool stuff, you know, the Who and, you know, all that sort of vibe was my dad's sort of influence. Whereas my mum was very much, you know, playing Ella Fitzgerald around the house and Nina Simone and that sort of thing. So there was definitely influence from there. But yeah, I think in terms of what I like to sing, I like the stuff, anything with a bit of grit to it, you know, anything with a bit of passion. And, you know, I've always kind of looked towards the likes of Joe Cocker and Roger Daltrey and those kind of people that just portray a song. For me, it's not about vocal excellence. It's more about just getting the feeling across. So that's
energy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where I sit happily, I think. And it's therapy sometimes, you know, you get with those sorts of songs, you get to release some stuff. So, you know, it's always been a real go-to for me. But that said, you know, it is nice to step back and, you know, I like with the jazz stuff, I really like what the Postmodern Jukebox guys did with, you know, bringing some of the newer stuff back to an old school feel. And I kind of really got into that for a while and, you know, was doing that kind of stuff as well. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. I've tried my hand at a lot of things. I think naturally my voice is probably more suited to sort of soul Motown stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where I would say my voice sits more comfortably. And I do enjoy it, but I don't think it's something I could do day in, day out because I just need that grit. That's the thing that fires me up. So, which is where I think Pink came into it because she has quite a nice balance of angst and tenderness and vulnerability and all that sort of stuff thrown into one with a lot of her music. So it's quite a natural progression for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested to hear how people get into like just certain tribute artists. And is it born from like a fan of the music, or just sort of seeing a gap in the market? Or
no, it was definitely who am I not going to get sick of performing as? I think for me, I'm not really a natural actress, so turning your hand to being a completely different character is really difficult, which is something I'm pushing myself with at the moment with a different show. But with Pink, I think I just naturally performed quite similarly to her anyway. You know, if I look back at some of my early band footage, I'm like, oh God, like actually, am I actually even putting on a show, or have I just changed my hair? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, I think definitely I was a fan of her music, and I've always been a bit of a tomboy, so there was never a chance of, you know, doing a Taylor Swift or anything. I'm not built for that. Yeah. So yeah, from that perspective, it was probably either going to be Pink or Alanis Morissette or, you know, Gwen Stefani's or just someone that's a little bit less girly, I guess, for want of a better word. But yeah, I think for me with Pink, there's just such a vast repertoire of stuff, you know, and I can do a lot longer sets with her than you can with a lot of artists because she's just got such a huge back catalogue. Yeah. So yeah, it's nice because you can just throw in stuff that you've not done in other shows for a while because there's just so much to choose from. So yeah, she was quite an easy progression, but it wasn't, you know, it was other people that suggested I did the tribute stuff. I didn't really know that market was anywhere near as big as it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I've been doing this long enough to know whether tributes have always been this popular or it's just a recent thing, but I'm definitely hearing and getting the impression that they're popular than ever at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially like theatre shows and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I always kind of had the opinion of tributes that, you know, it's kind of somebody in the corner of a pub in a dodgy wig and a Smithy's joke costume. You know, it was that kind of, you know, Chinese Elvis. But, you know,
they still exist, I'm sure.
They do. And there is definitely a place for that, you know, I think. But I had no idea that there was kind of a high-end tribute market. It completely passed me by. And I kind of got to a point in my career with it where I was just done. I was so tired of doing the same stuff all the time and, you know, this kind of standard function set, which I don't actually even think people want anymore. I think we deliver, as function musicians, we deliver this quite dated approach to function music, and I was just bored, and I felt that there was, I'm the sort of person that likes the build.
Yeah.
So I get really fired up by the creation and building something, and then I build it. Yeah. And I kind of go, oh, okay.
It's built now.
Now what? So I've always been quite lucky in as much as, I don't know if it's luck or stupidity, but I go, what can I do? And it's like, I'll learn the guitar. Brilliant. I'll be an acoustic artist. And I go off and I do that. And I go, okay, great. I've got loads of gigs. But now I'm bored. Like, what can I do now? And it's like, okay, well, I'll do this. And that was kind of the same thing. I just got to this point where I was like, I think I'm just going to give up music for a bit again, because I'm not being inspired by it. And a very good friend of mine, Maddie, who's been in the industry years and years and years, said to me, you need to look at the tribute market before you sort of, throw it all in. Just have a look, because I think you'll really get something out of it. And I was like, really? It's just basically doing what I'm doing, but wearing a costume, isn't it? I had no idea that, the level of, just the festival scene is huge for tributes now, especially some of the overseas festivals. The stages are as big as the real acts would be on. The lighting and the sound and stuff is it's mind blowing, really. And there seems to be a real support for tributes now that wasn't there before. From an audience perspective, people are involved, and they're. I don't know whether it's because the cost of going to see the acts now is through the roof. Yeah. I remember going to see Pink last year, and I think between myself and my husband, it wasn't much short of £1,000 for 2 tickets.
Yeah. Is that just tickets, or do you mean like the cost of everything, like travel and hotels and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the tickets themselves. I got the front seat, because I'm like, I'm going to go, and it's a business expense. I'm learning. This is research. So we got the kind of gold circle tickets for it, but I think just the tickets were just short of 800.
Yeah, that's outrageous, isn't it? Really?
And it's like, who can do that on a regular basis? My son is massively into his music at the moment, and he likes Radiohead, and he's kind of that. He's listening to all the stuff I was listening to at his age, which is bizarre. But for somebody who, as a young person, trying to get out and see live music, he's finding himself having to go to kind of some of the lesser known bands, because it's just too expensive to go and see the biggest, but the bigger stars now. Yeah. So I think that's where the tributes are really coming in. I get a lot of feedback from parents saying, my daughter loves Pink, but I just can't afford to take her to see her. So this is kind of like the next best thing for us, which is, it's lovely for me. But I do think it's opened up a market for tributes that maybe wasn't there beforehand. Yeah. I remember going to see Ed Sheeran for £22 when he first came out. So it's not it's just not as accessible anymore for people. So hopefully tributes are kind of bridging the gap a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So the early days of Pinkish, then, what did that look like? What was the show when you sort of first started?
It was a weird one. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken, so I came at it with a bit of a business plan, in as much as I don't have 10 years to build this show. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to do it, I sort of set aside a pot of money, and I said, okay, win, lose or draw. Let's throw this at it, and if I don't make it back, this is how much I'm willing to lose on this, this project, if you like. Yeah. Thankfully, it came back, But yeah, it was just myself and a roller banner and a dodgy wig, and just, I mean, I'm quite lucky with Pink, because she, costume wise, you can go one way or another with her. She does have all the high end kind of, rhinestone leotards and all that sort of stuff, but she also wears jeans and a shirt. So, so the early tribute was very much, kind of just putting together what I could on a shoestring, really. Mm-hmm. And yeah, my first gig was in a little pub over in Croydon. They were having a Pink party. They went all in. They literally painted the outside of the pub pink to go with the theme. I've never seen a venue go in quite as hard. And it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was ropey as hell, but it was great fun. And I think, a lot of tributes that I speak to start that way. They just start small and just kind of keep building. But for me, I kind of gave myself a 3-year plan. My husband's been in the industry a long time, and he was like, year 1 is literally kind of the build, and year 2 is making the connections, and year 3 is probably when you're going to start seeing the work come in. And I was like, no, I haven't got that. I haven't got that amount of time. Like, let's condense that as much as we can.
So when did this start? Actually, I haven't asked that.
This is I'm just going into my 3rd year.
Right, cool.
So, yeah, it's been 2 years. When was my first show? I'm thinking, I think, June, July time. So, yeah, it would have been 2 years in June just gone. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's still quite new as tributes go. I mean, I know people that have been doing the same tribute for 20 years. But I didn't have 20 years. The show is far too energetic for me to still be doing that in 20 years' time. So, it was very much, we need to get this moving pretty quickly. And from the first show, I kind of went, okay, where do I want this to go? What sort of presentation do I put forward? I knew straight away I wanted to get dancers on board.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the very next step after my first show. Is like, okay, let's put some feelers out for dancers, and it just kind of just kept growing and snowballing and building from there, really. So yeah, it's been fun, that's for sure.
Yeah. Is there much competition in the way of like Pink tributes? I can't say that I've heard of loads, but also do you compete with just other general tribute artists as well for the same kind of work?
Not really. I've found it's been one of the most refreshing things about the tribute market is how much people support each other.
Yeah.
And I would say for me, when I obviously looked around at, who's doing what before I started, and for me, there was 2 clear front runners as Pink. I think both girls had been doing it 10 years plus, and they were kind of the names, the go-to names, and still are, absolutely. And there are still places that I cannot even get to look at my videos because they're like, no, we use such and such. We're not, we're not going there. And they're both great. And I think the nice thing is everyone, although you're tributing the same person, you do it in your way, so the presentations are never quite the same. And there are some people that kind of go very much for the Pink rock chick era. And there are, for me, I try and keep as current as I possibly can. So I'm always trying to portray the most recent version of what she's doing and doing, some of the other stuff as well. But I try and keep it as authentic as I can to what's going on at the moment. But I've got a little group of girls that are all Pink tributes, and we all chat, and we're all like, have you done that venue? Have you spoken to that person? And I can't do this. Are you free? And if somebody's advertising for a tribute online, we'll all tag each other if we can't do it. And it's just, it's been really refreshing because I didn't have that in my previous incarnation, if you like, as myself, because everybody was going for the same work. Yeah. Whereas if someone's looking for a Pink tribute, that's what they want. You can't, there's only a handful of us that are going to be able to do it. And if we're already booked, let someone, give it to somebody else. So I've not found that it's actually been a competitive industry at all. I've found the complete opposite. I've found some really good friends from it. I've been very blessed, actually. There's some, you get a random message in your inbox saying like, I love your show. And, and it's just really, really refreshing when women are supportive of each other. There's a lot of that in this industry. And the same with the other acts. I think I see it all the time where there's kind of this cross-pollination of one act advertising for someone else or recommending someone else, and you start to get to know everybody, and often you're using the same dancers or the same band members, or you're on the same shows together on the same lineups and stuff. So yeah, it's been I can't say there's been a competitiveness to it at all. Maybe behind closed doors that I'm not hearing about. but not in any way, shape or form. Actually, it's been
that's good to hear. Like we do a lot of wedding singers on this podcast and talk a lot about the wedding industry, but they seem to have just such a strong community as well, and all seem to help each other out. So it's good to hear that that's not that's in other sort of areas of this function world as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely enough work to go around. That's the
that's the mentality you got to have, right? Yeah. Live and let live, and
for sure.
If you the more you give, the more you'll get back, I think, as well.
I hope so. Yeah, that's the plan.
So after the solo show, you brought dancers on board. What was the next stage for you?
So I started with 2 dancers, that grew to 4. We've now got a team of about 12 girls. Generally, there's no more than 4 or 6 of us on stage at any one time. So, but I'm very blessed. I've got what I would consider some of the best in the industry working for me. I have a fantastic choreographer on board who I think makes the show quite stand out, because it's not an easy dance, that's for sure. If anybody comes onto it, they're kind of like, oh my God, we work the girls hard, but we have great fun with it. And I think that's, again, trying to reflect what I see on stage with Pink, is they just look like they're having a great time. So that was really important for me to capture and kind of present. But yeah, we brought the girls on board. That was kind of year 1, I guess. And then year 2, I started putting the band together. And same thing, really. It's just I'm quite picky about quality. So it's, for me, it's like I want to be presenting real talent, and everybody that surrounds me, all the guys in the band and, the backing singers and the musicians and the dancers, they're just all of a real high standard. But they're also personalities that you want to spend time with. And I think that's massively important, especially if you're on tour with people and, sharing hotel rooms and stuff like that. Any personalities that cause friction or, it just makes everything so much harder. So, for me, it was just about bringing the right people with, incredible talent, but people that you can have fun with, and people that, on stage you're not faking it. And that was really important for me, because I think it's obvious to the audience. If you kind of I don't know, if you're acting like you're having fun, it's obvious. It needs to be authentic. So I always sort of say with any of the new girls, like new dancers that come on board, obviously they want to do a good job in their first show, because of the level of talent we bring in. They're obsessed with getting it right, don't want to get it wrong. And it's like, look, we all get it wrong. Pink gets it wrong. Pink's dancers get it wrong. But just have fun with it. And then that way, you're human at the end of the day. Just try not to break anything. That's the key. Please don't break a limb, because I'm going to need you next week as well. So it's just this ever-growing development, really. I mean, I'm stupidly at the tender age of 43 thought it'd be a good idea to start learning aerial as well, because she does that. You kind of go, God, she's been doing this since she was 17. But how hard can it be, kind of thing? It's super hard. Don't bother. Anyone who thinks about it at my age, don't bother. It's killing me.
Have you introduced that into the show already, or is that like a work in progress?
Aerial show next month. So
wow.
I'm petrified, if I'm honest, absolutely petrified. But I'm easing it in very gently. And I'm at the end of the day, I'm just a singer, so I'm having to kind of up my dance skills, which we've already discussed were not the best. So everything's been a real learning curve, and it's great because it's constantly challenging me. And all areas of the show challenge me, costume creation, and I do all my own visual backdrops, and, creating medleys, and all of that sort of stuff is stuff that I never had to do before. So there's a lot of challenges which keep me entertained and exhausted. Probably fair to say.
This episode is brought to you by Acoustic Backs and Tracks, your go-to source for premium acoustic back and tracks that sound and feel like the real deal. Whether you're performing at weddings, recording content, or just practicing at home, it's like having a professional band right there with you. Their tracks are recorded by top session musicians with real instruments and real emotion. No lifeless MIDI here. Need something custom? They've got you covered. From key changes to mashups to exclusive tracks made just for you. Plus, their customer support is fast, friendly, and actually understands musicians. No task is too big for them. And here's the best part. Listeners of the Full-Time Function Musician podcast get 10% off their first order. Just head to acousticbacksandtracks.com and use the code FUNCTION10 at checkout. That's function all in capitals and 10 at the end, but you can find their website link and the code in the episode description. I mean, so how important do you think it is to sort of act like the artist that you're doing a tribute to, or and look like as well?
I think it depends what level you want to take being a tribute. And I think for me, it was always really important to not just be authentic, but do Pink justice. You know, as a human, she works incredibly hard, and she, you know, I just felt I almost had a bit of a responsibility to not do a half-assed version. You know, it was like, if you're going to do this, you've kind of got to go all in, and try and be as, you know, pay tribute rather than just be a tribute. You know, I think for years and years, tributes tended to be to dead people. You know, it's actually, you know, quite. And I know people that are like, "What do you mean you tribute Pink? She's not dead." You know, it was your Elvises and your Buddy Hollys and all those people that you can't go and see. Whereas now there's a tribute to everyone. You know, a new artist comes out and within a week I see a tribute, and I'm like, how have you even got any songs to sing? You know, it's just, but that's the industry now. So if you're tributing somebody that people can actually go and see the show, I think you've kind of got to be presenting something that's worth watching. So it was very important for me to do a good job. I mean, I think the wig lasted 2 shows, and I said, my hair's got to go. I can't, you know, I felt like I was constantly kind of, you know, playing and pulling, and it was like, if I'm going to do this, the hair's got to come off. And even with that, you know, I've always had sort of, I don't want to say an edgy haircut, but I've always, you know, undercuts or short hair or whatever. I've never been blonde, and I would say there was 8 months of heartache that went with that. I was just, every time I looked in the mirror, I hated what I saw. And, you know, there was an actual like, okay, this is affecting me as a person now. I need to adjust this. And certainly for my husband as well, he was like, I didn't marry Pink, you know, like, it's like, who is this person? Like, because it becomes, at that level, becomes quite all consuming, I guess.
Yeah.
Depending on your personality type, you know, I'm all or nothing. So so for me it was, okay, the hair's got to come off. I lost a ton of weight, which I've put all back on since being on the road for 2 years. But it was very, very important for me to kind of, to do her justice. And I just didn't want anyone to kind of look at it and go, the thing at the moment is Timu Pink or Timu Ariana, or, you know, everyone, that's kind of like the strap line for tribute. So it's like, if I'm going to be Timu, I'm going to be, you know, the one that you get and you go, oh, actually, this was all right. I wasn't expecting this, you know. So that's where we'll sit. We'll sit with high-end Timu. I can take that.
Yeah. And how about the like behind the scenes sort of production side of things as well? Do you have to invest a lot into that, like lighting and like stage things?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was the side of it that I wasn't particularly prepared for. I already had my own PA and everything from gigging for years, and I had my own lighting and stuff like that. So that wasn't massively important. But certainly visual backdrops and things like that I wasn't prepared for. I'd never worked with screens behind me or anything like that. And I've been quite fortunate, I think, where I quite quickly was put onto shows that all of that was provided for me. So I could just turn up with a USB stick and off we go. But even that, I'm old school. I used to use mini disc players. What's the USB? Like, what's an MP4? I had no idea. So it was a very quick, steep learning curve for me to kind of put that side of the show together. And I'm still learning. It's I did all that as a solo act, and now I'm like, okay, well, I've got a band. So now, a lot of the time bands are now playing to clicks. Or there's, backing vocals will be on a track, or the instruments you're not presenting will be on a track. And again, I'd never done that before. And I was like, okay, well, they're not the same. We do that at different tempos to that. So now I've got to redo all the visuals. And it's kind of like, it keeps you on your toes all the time. But in terms of equipment and that side of things, I've become a bit of a princess. I don't like setting up a PA anymore. I'm too old and it's tiring, and there's a lot. The load in and load out bit is the bit I'm trying to steer away from if I possibly can. Though every now and then you do a gig and you're like, okay, this is grounding. You need this. But I think as your production gets bigger, actually that side of it becomes less, which is really nice because you turn up and actually the venues are already supplying it all for you, which then moves you into, okay, well, now I need to tell the venue what lighting I want. Well, I don't really know what lighting I want because I've never had to worry about that before. So, I've kind of done some research into the terms that would be used for lighting and sound and, what instructions you need to give to sound engineers and, that sort of thing. So, it's just learning, learning different ways of communicating and producing your show for different venues, I guess. It's been fun. It's been fun.
So that is moving into theatres now, right? I think when we first originally spoke, you said maybe your first theatre show was just coming up, or in the near future.
14th of November is the first one, and it's a self-funded show. So please come. It's a bit of a gamble. It's a full band lineup with dancers, and same thing. It's just been. It's one of those things that you think your show is ready, and then you go, oh, okay, the theatre is a completely different beast. All of a sudden, you're now running, everything has to run to a really strict time schedule. You have to make sure that your show doesn't run over or you'll get fined in theatres and that sort of thing. So there's just different things to have to consider. And certainly for me, I know a lot of shows will have their own promotion companies behind them or production companies behind them and that sort of thing. And I am that, I'm finding my way as we go. I'm quite lucky. My husband's been in the theatre industry for 20 plus years. So I've got a little bit of help with that when we see each other. We're both busy musicians. So that's quite difficult. But he's kind of been able to answer any questions that I've had along the way, which has been really helpful. But it's just a new thing. And I think, obviously the most daunting thing for me is getting bums on seats. It's, I'm funding the whole thing. I pay all the band members, the dancers and stuff that comes out of my pocket. So I just have to kind of cross my fingers and go, well, hopefully people will be there to watch it and I can actually, break even at least is kind of the plan. I mean, the first theatre show for me is very much about, can we do this? And is this a show that people are going to want to come and see specifically? I think, up till now, Pinkish has always been part of a lineup for a festival or, the evening entertainment at Butlins. So you've kind of got your captive audience already. Whereas when you're presenting your own theatre show, people have got to come to see you. They've got to want to see that show. You've got to firstly have Pink fans, which she's a bit of a niche act. I'm not going to lie. It's she as big as she is. She definitely doesn't have the same reach as a lot of the bigger stars do. For whatever reason, I don't really know, but so you've got to firstly have the audience in place, and secondly, have the audience that want to see a tribute to it. So yeah, it's quite daunting, and I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping for the best at the moment.
I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Where is it? When is it?
It's the 14th of November at the Woodville Halls in Gravesend in Kent. So I did my first one locally, because I was like, well, at least if my family don't turn up, then we've got a problem. And I've always had quite a good following in Gravesend from the days before the tribute. So I've been very supported by those people as well, which has been wonderful. So yeah, it's doing okay at the moment. It's doing okay. It's doing better than I thought. So we've still got just under a month left. So we're giving it a big push at the moment, trying to get it out there. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the way that it's gone to date. So if we sell no more tickets, then I've still had a successful run, I think. Everyone's going to get paid, let's put it that way. Maybe not me, but everyone else.
I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I think it's a good way to think about it as well, as just kind of like the first stage, rather than like this has to be the most successful thing or not. But so I mean, assuming it is super successful, assuming it sells out, what's the plan after that?
So we have another theatre the following week. That's down in Penzance, and that's the one where I'll be doing aerial, hopefully, and not falling on my head. So that's the next theatre show. We've got a couple booked in for next year again already. I'm not totally sure if full-time theatre work is where I would want to go.
So there's no like tour plans or anything like that at the moment? Or? Yeah,
I mean, it's a weird one, because for me, I feel like I'm always on tour.
Yeah.
Although it's not kind of a run of theatres, if you like.
Yeah.
I'm very rarely at home anymore, and I do tend to bounce from hotel to hotel. So yeah, I feel like I'm constantly on tour, which is weird, because it's something that I never ever did. All of my work was always within an hour from home, whereas now it's kind of like, 4 hours, yeah, that's not too bad. So yeah, I don't know theatre wise if I'm going to be looking at touring. I don't actually know if Pink's audience is in theatres, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I know one of the other, one of the girls that I would consider to be, the top Pink tributes in the country. She does a lot of theatres. And yeah, I just don't know if that's for me. I think Pink sits really well in festivals.
Yeah.
That's the kind of environment that I really enjoy. And I think that's where a lot of Pink fans, if you like, would go over and above theatres. So they definitely have their place within my projection, if you like, but I don't think it's what I'm going to be pushing for sort of week in, week out work. It's just going to be part of the portfolio, really.
Yeah.
And I think you have to keep your fingers in as many venue pies as possible to keep busy, really. So
yeah.
And it's also a big risk if you're self-promoting. If every time you do a theatre, it's a massive risk, because the bill is yours to foot if you don't get people in. If there's a production company that wants to take it on and take that risk, then it's a different conversation. Maybe we'll push it a little bit harder. But at the moment, yeah, it's me going to my bank manager and going, "This is a great idea. Let's do it." And then kind of doing that and hoping that it pays off, really. So there's only so many that you can do on that basis at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a super successful show. So on the festival side of things, then how does that work in terms of getting festivals? Do you have to apply for them? Do you get asked to do them now because you've been doing it for a little while? Do they pay as well as, say, like the holiday parks and stuff like that? Because I know obviously they've got a big lineup of artists. Like, it must cost a fortune to put on as well.
It's very varied. I mean, there are festivals. It's the same with everything, really. I mean, everyone's got their own budget, and sometimes you will fit to their budget and sometimes you won't. I try to be quite. I think when you first start out, you say yes to everything, and I definitely did for a long time, just to kind of get the experience and get my name out and that sort of thing. But I think at some point you have to decide where you want to sit in the market and what your production is worth. So I now I have like a minimum price now that I will go out for. And if a festival approaches me and they don't have that budget, then I'm quite happy to offer other pinks that do sit within that budget that don't quite have the expenses that I have in terms of dancers and, band lineups and that sort of thing. So there are definitely, it's definitely a sliding scale, I think, when it comes to festivals. But there are, like I say, there's some. I've just been thankfully put onto the list for Replica Festival next year, and they're actually going for the Guinness World Record for the biggest, the most acts at a tribute festival, biggest festival in Europe. So that'll be fun to see. I think they've got 4 stages and acts on every stage, so that's going to be huge. But you tend to find that there's definitely a tiering system, and this sounds awful, but as I said to you before, there's definitely a place for Chinese Elvis, and I use that because I've had a Chinese Elvis literally, 10 minutes up the road from me, and he's been doing it since I was a kid, and it's kind of a novelty show. But he's busy, and he's earned a living out of it for as long as I can remember. He's not going to be at Replica Festival, it's that kind of thing. You have to work out where your market is.
Do you go out? Do you have obviously you started as solo, then brought dancers on and got band. Now, do you just do band stuff now, or just dancers, or will you not do solo stuff anymore? Or
no, I offer all 3. I think there's definitely a market for all 3. It's definitely a lot harder. I think you tend to find that a band lineup will usually be your headline act because it's expensive. You've got a lot of mouths to feed, so there's not as much work for full band lineups. I would say I'm probably 70% solo, 20% with dancers and 10% with band is probably where we're at the moment. And I'm okay with that because I think I really enjoy the freedom of being on my own. I think there's a lot more opportunity for kind of banter with the audience and that sort of thing when you're not worrying about, I need to be there on that part of the stage because that's where the dancers need me to be. And, so each time I go out with a different lineup, it's a slightly different presentation. And I think they all have their place, and I enjoy all 3 equally. I think I've always, my history is with bands, so when I get with a band, it's a different animal for me. I love a live band feel. But equally, when you go out on your own as much as you do, the dancers come on board, and it's like, I've got my girls back. It's nice to have that kind of camaraderie and they just look great, as from a visual perspective from the audience, having the dancers on stage is just, it really does add a dimension to the show. So yeah, a lot of festivals now come through agents. A lot of them, if they're putting multiple acts on, will just go to an agent to provide all of those acts. So I have a few agents that I work with. But you also have a lot of festivals that won't work with agents, and they want to get to know the act individually, and they want to know kind of you as a person. And you tend to find there's quite a lot of loyalty with those festivals. And I would put your Pride festivals and stuff like that fall into that category. I've got some really good relationships with the organisers of a lot of the Pride events. We were lucky enough to do UK Pride this year, which was massive for me. It was the biggest Pride festival in the country. So yeah, that was really cool. And those, they all come direct. A lot of it is me, knocking on doors and just going, hi, here I am. This is what I do. Yeah. Is it of any interest?
That's interesting because that must help, because Pink is obviously quite a big advocate for that kind of thing and Pride and stuff like that. So that must help with that kind of show as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely an audience that my act suits. So they're behind it, and she's very much about being your authentic self and being proud of who you are, and unapologetically so. I definitely think the messages in her songs, especially she's done a song called something perfect. I won't say the first word because I don't know how PG the podcast is. But that song definitely has kind of become the pride anthem for me. That's the one that, people really resonate with, because it's about, you're perfect no matter who you are, what you are, how you present yourself, you're perfect, and that tends to go down incredibly well at the prides. And they're just great fun events. They're really great fun, and they're very family orientated. And I think, a lot of people, if you're not part of that community and you don't attend those events, you almost kind of feel like it's not for you. And it's just couldn't be further from the truth. There's families there, there's kids there. It's just a colourful, happy, inclusive event for everyone. So I would because I'd never been. I'll be totally honest. I'd never been to a Pride event. It's just not something that was ever on my radar. And I love them. They're just so much fun, if people haven't been, just go. The entertainment's awesome and people are awesome, and it's just a happy day. So get yourself along to a Pride next year. Hopefully one of the ones I'm at.
I think that brings us quite nicely onto some of your best gigs and your worst gigs, or just a time to brag or to share any funny stories that you've had from some of the bad experiences at shows.
Okay. Do you know what? I've been so lucky, and I think I've had so many amazing gigs over the last 2 years. I've done more in the 2 years of being a tribute than I did in 20 years of not. And I've been very fortunate to work for TUI and doing a lot of the overseas stuff for their Sensatori hotels, which have been incredible. You get flown out to these beautiful places, put up in a hotel, and perform for 45 minutes in the evening, and it's just like, whose life is this? So they've been amazing. I've been very lucky to do those. I definitely think for me the festivals stand up there for my highlight work. I mean, weirdly, the ones in the rain are the ones that I love the most. Because your audience is soaked, you're soaked, and everyone's still there and they're still singing at the top of it, and it becomes very kind of like almost quite British. Do you know what I mean? We will persevere and we will have a good time, and everyone's like, I don't know what it is about it, but when you do a festival in the rain, you kind of, it's just a different vibe. I love it. The sound men don't like me particularly because I'm out in the audience getting their mics wet and stuff. So I'm sure I cause them no end of headaches. But they're really good fun. And we've done a couple. Actually, Pride was one of those. Bless the girls. We had like a catwalk runway, and they were all over the place. So that was interesting. But I think all of the festivals we did one called Order Fest this year, which was great. And I think probably my highlight festival this year was called, what was it called? Dubbed Out Festival. It was like a VW camper van weekend.
Yeah.
The audience were insane, absolutely insane. And I remember we'd finished a song and the cheering and the clapping just seemed to never end. It just went on and on. I just remember looking at the girls and I was like, this is madness. Like, what's going on? They've been amazing, festival-wise. And Butlins. I love Butlins. And I never thought I would say that because outside of the tribute, I'm not a kid person. But all of a sudden, you're connecting with kids who might not even know the music they're listening to, but they're becoming part of what you're doing. And they do meet and greets at the end, and you get to meet all the kids, and it's just Butlins has been great. I've had a residency there this year. I've done all three throughout the year, and I've loved every minute of Butlins. The teams are brilliant, and the people are lovely. So I've been very lucky. I don't know if there's been a worse one, if I'm honest. I'm not totally sure. I mean, it was a moment when I had a kid come up and went, "Who are you pretending to be?" that was kind of okay, fair enough. But as a tribute, I don't know I've had a worse one, because every one has been a step up from some of the worst gigs I've had as myself.
Yeah.
And some of them have just been soul destroying, you know, where you're singing to 3 people in a pub and they're all watching boxing and you're like,
Yeah.
you know, trained so hard for this. Anyone? Like, no? Okay. So yeah, anything really has been a step up from that, I guess.
Yeah, beautiful. I think I just have one more question on the tribute side of things before we move on to the last bit of the show. And is there any sort of like legalities that you have to worry about or think about when doing a tribute artist, or is it not matter at all? It's just kind of comes under the same rules as like all sort of cover work.
Yeah, I think in terms of sort of PRS and that sort of thing, exactly the same. You know, you're singing somebody else's song, so they'll receive PRS payments from you. Generally, that's taken care of by the venues. I do a lot of recreation of tour tracks, so not necessarily album versions, but I have those made personally. I don't know whether I need to or not, but generally you can buy backing tracks and that will give you the right to use them, you know, that sort of thing. I think the only thing you have to be a bit careful of is if you're selling merchandise and it contains images of the original artist and things like that. Right. You know, if you've got a t-shirt with your own face on it, you're fine, but you can't really sell a t-shirt with pink on it. You know, that would be crossing the line a little bit. I think my logo is kind of on the fence because it's kind of Pink's logo, but with ish on the end. Yeah. So you could argue, you know, I think if she really wanted to take me to court over that, she probably could. But in my defence, I've had a really lovely. I've been, you know, very blessed to have a very lovely message from her guitarist and her drummers. Sort of commented on our stuff online as well. So I'm like, if they've both seen it,
yeah, wow, that's great.
I haven't had a letter through the post yet. I think I'm probably all right. And I would hope Pink is cool enough to know that I'm not making the money that she is out of it. So I don't think she would be too problematic. But I do know artists that have been, you know, Facebook and things like that are a real minefield because you can get up to 10,000 followers or something, and Facebook will pull your post or pull your page down and just say, you know, you're imitating somebody. Yeah. It's like, of course I am. That's my job. And
we have that episode coming up in a couple of weeks. We've got another tribute artist who's going through that battle right now. I thought this would tie in quite nicely together. So we're going to have some info on that as well. You have to be careful.
But I think as long as you put out there, I am a tribute artist, you know, and rather than, I don't know, if I was to put Pink tribute, they would probably pull me down, but I'm like Calli Malpas tribute to, you know, and then you kind of just have to be a little bit careful about how you word things sometimes. Yeah. But generally, I think we're all all right. We're quite safe. No lawsuits yet.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, this has been really fun. Just before we move on to the last bit of the show, then, is there anything that you wish I'd asked, or anything that you kind of just want to leave people with that might be sort of getting into tribute stuff?
I think, you know, if anybody is looking to get into the industry, it's great fun, but just be prepared. You know, I kind of came in with a mentality that, you know, the wages are better as a tribute. There's no doubt in that. And I know a lot of people move over to that market because of that. They're like, oh, great, if I just put on a wig, I can charge double now, which definitely happens. I've seen that happen. For me, I was like, okay, great. Well, the wages are going to go up, so maybe I can work less and earn more. That doesn't work. You know, for anyone looking to get into this, I've never worked as hard in my life. So just be prepared for that. But I would say, you know, definitely the takeaway for me would be go to showcases. They do various showcases across the country that are set up specifically for agents to go and view acts. It doesn't have to be tribute acts, but, you know, any kind of act. Going to showcases absolutely rocketed, you know, my bookings in the first year.
And these are mainly focused towards like holiday parks and things like that, I believe, right?
All sorts, yeah. Holiday parks, cruises, overseas work. Okay. Agents that will be supplying festivals, you know, so there's kind of all different areas in one room, and they'll all be looking for slightly different things. But it just means that you pay to perform for them.
Yeah.
But you also get, from a lot of them, they'll provide you with video footage, so you'll get a show reel out of it as well. But for that money, you're getting to literally perform in front of the people that have the contact book,
Yeah.
And that for me was just, the most valuable experience. And I make sure that I do showcases every year now. Not that I necessarily need to, because I am performing to the same people, but just to keep at the forefront of their mind, because every year new people are coming out and doing tributes to the person you're doing. So even if you're at the top of your game, which I am absolutely not yet, but if you are, next year you might not be, so you've got to be constant, don't sit on, don't get complacent, I guess is the message there. It's, just keep going to your showcases, keep networking, keep making sure people know that you're around, and don't get disheartened, because a lot of the time you'll send out 1,000 emails and you won't get any back. And it's like, and I know a lot of people are like, nobody ever responds to me and I'm going to give it up. And it's like, you just got to, keep throwing stuff at the wall. Something will stick at some point, and be a little bit resilient and know that it's not a personal thing. But showcases is my number one takeaway. Definitely do showcases. Yeah,
great advice. Beautiful. So just as we move on to the last bit of the show then, the quick fire round. Some quick questions for you. I should have some theme music there, shouldn't I? So what is the most effective thing that you've done to market yourself or your business? I feel like you literally just answered that one.
Showcases. 100%. Absolutely.
What have you learned in the last 3 months that you wish you knew 3 years ago?
Oh, okay. Take time out. Just put rest days in the diary.
So often that comes up.
Yeah, massively. It's super important. Burnout is a real thing.
It's so hard with stuff like this, isn't it? Because it's like, as you said earlier, it's just all encompassing, and there is, unless you set your own schedule, there is no schedule. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool. If you were just starting out now, what is the first thing that you'd do?
First thing, oh goodness, I think just network. Go and look at other tributes. Decide. I think the best thing to do is look at people you aspire to be like. And I looked at other shows and I was like, that quality is where I want to be at. It doesn't need to be Pink. It could be anyone. I remember looking at a Beyonce actually really early on and just going, I like what she's producing, and that's the kind of level I want to be at. And just working out where your place in the market is and what you've got to do to be in that place. It might not be being the best tribute artist in the world, do you know what I mean? But it might just be, I'd like to be doing a gig a month. But just work out what your goal is, your personal goal, and see what other people are doing, and what it's going to take to achieve that.
Good advice. What's the biggest mistake that you've made, and what did you learn from it?
Biggest mistake, I think, is probably oh, that's a hard question. Biggest mistake? Probably the wig. No, I'm joking. The wig actually wasn't too bad. The biggest mistake I think I'm probably still making, if I'm honest, and I'm still pushing the show for a market that I don't know exists in this country. My problem is I don't have a ceiling, and I'm just constantly trying to make the show bigger and bigger and better and better, and adding aerial and stuff like that. And I would say 99% of the venues won't have the facility for me to be able to do an aerial show. It's not necessarily, for me, it's a personal, growth and development rather than a show one. I spend a lot of money refining things that I probably won't get to make the money back on. So that's, you could say that's a mistake.
I don't know. I'm not sure you can call that a mistake. I feel like that's testing the water, isn't it? That's you've got to try some things. That if you've got some sort of gut feeling that it might work, I think you've got to pursue it a little bit.
A little bit, but I think you also need to know that actually what I'm doing is already enough.
Yeah.
For this market in the UK, there's only so much you can ask financially. there's only there are limits. So sometimes you just go, no, actually what I'm already doing is enough for that budget. I don't need to give any more, and I don't need to be any more. That's that's my mistake, I think.
I think that's just, it's just going back to like knowing kind of what you want out of it as well, isn't it? Like if you had the goal of you want to be like the number one tribute artist to whoever it is, and you want to do world tours and European tours and all that, then yeah. But if that's not what you want out of it, then you gotta, you know that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So last question. Do you use any specific tools or apps to help manage your business?
Oh, okay. Not really. I mean, I love a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet fanatic. I generally spend more time creating the spreadsheet than actioning the spreadsheet. That's a bit of an issue for me. There are some really handy tools for backing tracks and things like that. There's an app called Noises, which is great for pulling out vocals or pulling out instruments and that sort of thing. So that's been quite handy. What else? But yeah, I think generally it is kind of rinse and repeat across the industry. It's like the tribute industry is not much different to anything else. It's I still go out, to be honest, with my solo show, I still use iTunes. I just have a playlist in iTunes and off we go, So it's still quite rudimentary, is that the right word?
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, okay, we'll go with that. I'm going to look it up afterwards and go, it wasn't the right word. But yeah, I try and keep things as simple as possible, I think is the key. I still use iMovie to create my visuals and things like that, and everyone's like, no, you should be using, I don't know, whatever. My husband's got all singing, all dancing stuff that I haven't got. But it's like, no, if it works, it works. And it might take me a little bit longer than it would take someone else, but I'm actually going to have to go and learn a whole new program. So that's going to take time as well. So I'll leave that to the people that know how to do it.
Sometimes your time investment is better spent elsewhere, isn't
absolutely.
it? Rather than learning a new thing.
Yeah. So from that perspective, apps and things like that, I'm a bit of a technophobe. I'm that age group really where, I'm the crossover where I'd far rather be back on, analog stuff rather than digital. It confuses the hell out of me. Social media is the killer. That's the thing I wish I knew more about. Because I'm quite lapsed with social media, and I think if it's such a fundamental part of your business, and that would probably be money well spent, is having somebody control my social media for me. But then you have the problem of they don't speak in your voice, so it becomes a little bit impersonal as a product then. So, that's the only reason I've not gone down that route, I guess. But yeah, definitely make use of people who know their business. I spent ages making costumes, and, I've got a costume downstairs I've been working on for over a year, and it's still sitting there because I have 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there. Pay someone to do it, just buy once and buy right, because it is worth it. If your time, as you say, your time could be better spent somewhere else. So yeah.
Awesome. This has been really fun. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all the things that you do. So just lastly then, if people would like to find out a little bit more about you, where would you send them? I've got a website, which is www.pink-ish.com. Instagram is probably the busiest of my socials, which is pink_ish_tribute. And same on Facebook. I don't do TikTok or anything like that. I just can't. The TikTok community is not very nice to tributes, I have to say. I see a lot of hate and a lot of really quite personal attacks on TikTok. So I was like, no, I'm not interested in that community at all. But Instagram's great, and I think it's really good for connecting with other acts as well. But yeah, that's kind of where you can find them, mainly Instagram. Awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.